Ladies and gentlemen, how are you doing today? My name is John the Ninja. On May 10th, 2014, I went to my first rock festival show in Camden, New Jersey. The event was the WMMRBQ, a rock festival getting all the major talent of the year together to play a great show. Before I even thought about being in radio, before I even thought about talking to musicians, rock stars, rappers, famous people, I was there. I was just another fan, and I was watching a band that was on that bill. And a person with me right now is Mr. Mark Kasprzyk, or as you guys know him, Kaz from Redlight King. Redlight King is from Hamilton, Canada, and they made it big with 2011 Something for the Pain, with hits like that title track, Bullet in My Hand, Old Man, City Life, Comeback, and other albums including Irons in the Fire from 2013 with songs like Bleed and Born to Rise, and the Helldriver EP. They've paid their dues playing over 1,000 shows all over the world, playing on Conan O'Brien and Jay Leno, being featured in films such as The Italian Job, Draft Day, Iron Man 3, having their own song, Comeback, featured on the Avengers soundtrack, which I'm holding in my hand right now, and having done a slew of TV shows, and also having licenses to almost every single sports you can think of: NASCAR, NHL, NBA, Major League Baseball. And with over 80 million streams across Apple Music, Spotify, and Pandora and YouTube, you can say this band is ready to go. Redlight King is Mark Kasprzyk, known as Kaz, Julian Tomarin as guitar player, Brian Weaver on bass, and Mark Goodwin on drums. Their current single off their new album coming out next month, Moonshine, is Lift the Curse, which has been featured on Spotify playlists All New Rock and Volume, Rock Your Block, and Most Wanted, and being played all over Canada as we speak. Their current tour starts this September and ends in October. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Kaz of Redlight King. Sir, how are you doing tonight?
Yes, John and Ninja, thanks for the intro, man. You're just quite the stats guy. I like that.
Man, I love doing my homework.
Yeah, I appreciate that. You got everything right. Oh, it's great, man. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for talking to me. I appreciate the time, man. So we were just talking about your day. Did you have to do anything eventful, or was it just a normal day in the life of a rock star?
Today was pretty good. I went to the studio and just started running down some of the gear I've got. You know, we're leaving Saturday. Our first show's in Vegas, so I was just kind of going through some of the guitars, trying to figure out what I wanted to bring, and kind of running my guitar rig through its paces and the usual stuff like that, and doing a couple interviews today, and pretty simple day, dude.
And I see you got the backstage bar and billiards at Las Vegas. You're going to Idaho, Washington, and you're ending in Fresno, California. Now, I was wondering, this tour looks a little short compared to what you guys are used to. Is this a warm-up tour before you go out and do something bigger? Because bands like to do that.
Yeah, you got it. You nailed it. We're trying out the new record, new material before the album drops. It's a good way to sort of wipe the dust off and try stuff. See what songs work, what order, what tempos are good, transitions, things like that, and just get everybody kind of back on the same page. So, yeah, this is what I call a little warm-up run, but it's also a good way to get out there and see our fans and meet and talk to people on the West Coast and still hit some radio. So it's a win-win for us, and it gets us back out there.
And it makes it more intimate. Like you said, with the fans, you get to have a smaller crowd.
Totally.
So here's a question I had. You named Redlight King after your father's race car, the Redlight Bandit. But what was that car? It was a 67, and I never got what actual car it was.
Man, pretty good, dude. You're pretty good, man. 67 Fastback Barracuda.
Oh, it was a Barracuda.
Barracuda. Small block Dodge, 340 in it. And it was 9-second drag car, and he was running 9 seconds in the 70s, and that was really fast back then. Fast now, but it was really fast then.
Did you ever get to drag it behind his back, or at least take it out for a spin, take a date out?
Yeah, no, that car was definitely not street legal. And by the time that Redlight Bandit was retired, he built another car called the Heartbreak Hotel. That would have been like, he built Heartbreak in, I think, 81 or something like that. I still wasn't old enough to drive. I did drive the Heartbreak around the racetrack once or twice when I was really young. Might have been like 12 or 13. He let me kind of sit in it and boosted the seat. So back then you could kind of do that stuff. When we were younger, we'd drive around in cars, you know, bench seats with no seat belts, and he used to street race with us, with the kids in the car and stuff like that. So I don't know if you could do that these days, but
no, definitely not. But I do remember when you're growing up, the things your family does is just so much more fun. Like my aunt actually one time evaded the police because we were in the front seat with no seatbelts on. Fun family stories. But one thing I did catch, I know I'm sidetracking off a little bit, but this meant a lot to me to ask. You were on the Canadian National Olympic Judo team in 2000.
I was not on the Olympic team.
Okay.
I was on the National Judo team, and I was trying to qualify for the Olympics. We only sent 2 men out of a possible 8-man team. I did not go, but I was on the national team for 4 years and traveled the world fighting, doing judo. Yep, it's a true story.
That was my first mess up.
We're setting the record straight today, man, so that's all good. No, I appreciate it. Appreciate you asking.
That's a sport, just like jiu-jitsu, judo, taekwondo. That's a lot of commitment and a lot of focus. And I was just wondering, when did you actually start doing music? Because you have to be at a certain level to get there. I've been to the Junior Olympics when I was like maybe 10, 12. That's a cakewalk compared to what you had to face.
Yeah, I think I've been writing. I was recording music when I was 16, but they were my 2 passions. It was judo and music. And, the evolution of music, it never kind of left me. When I was 26, I signed my first record deal with Epic Records. So at that point, I had missed the Olympics. I thought, do I want to continue down this path, or with now the interest in my music, do I want to pursue music and put judo aside? So that was the transition in my career. I retired early from fighting, and I often regret it, but I think, at the same time, I've had a pretty incredible music career, I think, and I'm proud of the things I've done with this. So, it was a choice I made, and it sounds like it's a complete opposite thing, but it's, for me, it was just who I was, part of my life, both things.
And it's hard to let it go, but you did go on to have good success with Kazzer, and then later on forming Redlight King. Did say that you can say hi in a lot of different languages. Are you fluent in more than 2 languages?
Not fluent, but coming from Canada and being so multicultural, it was something that I always loved. I love people, and I love learning different cultures. And because I've been around the world and saw so many things, it's like, I don't know, I've probably got over 20, maybe 30 languages that I can sort of have a little bit of, hi, how are you? How's it going? Where's the bathroom? It's just a sign of respect, I think. So that people know, you respect their culture, and you're giving it a shot anyways. But I speak a little bit of French just because I'm Canadian, and English, of course, and maybe a little bit of Polish because my heritage is Polish. So, yeah, I'm fond of many cultures for various different reasons, but I just think it's a way of a sign of respect when you can say hello in someone else's language. Especially, in Canada, there's a lot of different people. In LA, there's so many different cultures and people. So, something I do, I don't know.
And it does definitely catch people's eyes. I've had situations where not so much John Wick, where I'm responding to some strife, but my dad's pretty good with being knowledgeable, so I've seen him throw out Russian, German. Might not know everything they're saying, but their tone, their attitude totally changes. You could see the face light up.
It's absolutely true, isn't it? It's people's automatically, they change their tone. Yeah, you're a worldly guy now. Now we can have a real conversation. Because when you meet people, you're kind of meeting the surface. People just open up, and I like meeting people. I appreciate the culture, and I travel a lot. I meet a lot of different people, so for me, it's important.
Just going to the start of the band, Julian, who you've been friends with for such a long time, initially turned you down 3 times when you asked him to join a band.
Where did you find that out? You've been doing your research for sure. Yeah, that guy turned me down lots of times, man. I finally dragged his ass to California, and we've been. We've been in different bands, for 17 years. So, man, we've been playing a long, long time.
I love the story where you said that he said, "No, bro, I'll see you at the top," and then when finally you guys hooked up, Redlight King started taking off. Initially. Yeah. What was it? Was he just hesitant with the place you were in life or the bands you were dealing with, or he just didn't have the time? What finally got you to go, hey, man, come with me? And he was like, I got you.
Yeah, I think you'd have to really talk to Julian to really hone it down. But he was in another band, and he was loyal to them. And also, it's a big step for someone to leave their country. You think, it's just the U.S. We're attached at the hip. Canada, the U.S., not a big deal. But it is. If we leave our country for more than 6 months, we lose our OHIP, our health care. We start working in the States illegally. We get banned for 7 years. We're just treated like any illegal immigrant, in the world. And to get my green card in the United States cost thousands and thousands of dollars and took me 10 years. So, it's a big deal. It's a big leap. and I think that he had a lot of reasons to hesitate. So, I'm lucky and grateful that he ended up coming down. And I think, like, we had been rehearsing the songs, and then I think, like, second or third week we were there, we did the Conan O'Brien show. I'm like, see, we're good.
All the way up. I'm happy you mentioned that because I'm big into wrestling, and when it was about 2013, there was a wrestler from Canada I knew named Speedball, and he couldn't wrestle in the United States anymore because his green card was revoked, and he also didn't get the correct license to work in the States. So he's been banned for that 7-year span you're talking about. So people don't really think about that.
Of course, yeah, it's hard, man. I think it's a little over the top. Like, I had to get immunized. They had to take my blood and do tetanus shot. They wanted to give me a tetanus twice within the same 18 months or something, which is really a bad move.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was, I had to go to court. It was a long, lengthy, tiring, exhausting process. I thought, man, it's no wonder it's hard. Everyone screams about immigration in the United States. It's so bloody hard to get in legally and to go through the steps in the process. So I'm definitely have sympathy for people who are trying to be honest and do it the right way, because it is expensive and it's difficult.
Agreed. Not to change the tone, I want to hit the new album, Moonshine, coming out October 25th, which is next month. What was the inspiration to call it Moonshine? Because I know you guys are a band for the hardworking man. Maybe some guys that have a little bit leisure, but everybody goes through hard knocks in life. So was that part of it? Because I feel like this album's got a little bit more a blues feel to it.
Moonshine actually isn't a reference towards liquor or illegal activity at all. The name Moonshine came from when I was making this album. I was driving to the studio every day, and I'd take the back roads, and what we call the back roads out here anyways, not the main highways, because you're toast if you take a highway in LA. So I was taking the back streets, and I would always pass this old van. It was a 73 Econoline shorty van, and it was raked. It had like a Baja look to it, but it was like those 70 boogie van. I guess, like, kind of, if I had to describe it as a layman thing, it would be the Scooby-Doo van. And it was baby blue, and on the side of this van, in very faded, rusted letters, said Moonshine.
Wow.
And it was the right era, matched the right tone, and then eventually, after 3 weeks of passing this thing, I went in and I saw a guy pulling up next to it in an old Mercedes. I go, that's got to be the guy. So I pulled over, I started talking to him, and then I would visit him every 2 weeks, and then eventually he agreed to sell me the van. So during the whole process of revitalizing Redlight King and seeing that van and it being the right era and having that cosmic name to me, Moonshine, and having some psychedelic influence in the music, I thought this is perfect. And so I named the album Moonshine. Man,
I just love how you find inspiration everywhere. Also, the Scooby-Doo van. I hope you guys touring that. Please tell me you're touring in that.
No, we're not, but that would be awesome. We're gonna do the next video. We're gonna have it for sure.
You said revitalizing Redlight King. When I listen to this album, it's toned down in a different way. It's not totally stripped down. It's still, hey, this is Redlight King, but the production use of effects is noticeable. What about your growth as a musician led to the decision to make this album sound more of a bluesy rock feel and not so much the harder edge that Redlight King is known for? Because you guys go back and forth. You have the hard songs and then you have the acoustics, but this one to me it has a different groove, which I was really digging.
Well, I'm glad you really dig it. I think it's an evolution of just who I am and the music that has been hitting me in the heart. It's a lot of old catalog, but it's also, as a songwriter, I don't want the production to get in the way of the song. So, we're not doubling guitars, we're not all playing the same thing or fixing errors. Like, this is more of a live record. The parts are intertwining and playing with each other in such a way that it's full with only two guitars, a bass, and drums, and a vocal, obviously. So, to me, that was the essence, is to try and capture some of the best sounding records to me were in the late 60s, early 70s. Just the way the drums sound. And we used a 73 Ludwig drum kit, and we mic'd it very minimally. And I think that my producer, Jimmy Messer, he was able to capture our performance in the best way possible, sonically. And then also we allowed him to make choices as far as certain performances go or vocal parts go, where I stayed out of my own way. So Normally, I was really heavy and picky about what I wanted to sound like, and this allowed other people to come in and say, no, this was great, man. I know you sounded more on point here, but this has felt more real, and this is edgier in a different kind of way. So to me, it's an evolution. It's where Red Light's going. This is a more alternative rock record. It'll resonate with hopefully some new fans and new people. So, but I don't know what else to say about it. I'm very, very proud of it, and I worked night and day on it for over a year.
Well, I'm happy you spoke about how you and Jimmy would go back and forth and how you've opened up musically. Let's talk about some of the songs on the album. We got your current single, Lift the Curse, Not Dead Yet, Long Way to Heaven, Until You're Dead, Working Man, which is a Rush cover, High Wire, Something to Die For, Don't Drink the Water, 340, Ain't Going Easy, and Nobody Wins. Now, with the Rush cover, I personally love that song. I was wondering, when you do a cover song, and it's not your own original piece, how do you figure out how to put your little oomph into it and still have the respect due to the artist? You can tell, hey, this is a Rush song, but that dude put his stamp on it. Kind of like if we were talking Stevie Ray Vaughan doing Jimi Hendrix Voodoo Child.
I'm super passionate about Rush. Obviously, they're from pretty much the same hometown as I am. I think from the industry standpoint, they were one of the most underrated bands, but I've always been in love with their musicianship and the fact that they've stayed together and stayed a band for so many years and so long. I just respect them so much. And the other thing is the title Working Man resonates with me, and the lyrics resonate with me because I've worked every blue-collar job you can imagine. I didn't come from money, and that meant, when you're old enough to strap on some boots and you had a driver's license, you were going and working. And then we weren't doing so well. I'd have to, subsidize my income by whether it's construction or working at the shop. Those are the kinds of jobs that I did. So when we decided to do this, I think as far as what you're saying, as far as how do you know how to put your lick on it, I think you got to keep an open mind. I think you definitely have to pay an homage to the original. And I didn't want to butcher this one because it would be sacrilegious. But hey, I did Neil Young, Old Man, so I have confidence that what we're doing is going to be received well. And with this one, we upped the tempo. We lowered the key. We played the guitars and dropped D, so it was a little tougher. Those were some of the immediate changes that I thought of. Arrangement-wise, I didn't want to change the arrangement too much, but I didn't want to run on for 7 minutes, so we messed with the arrangements a bit, but not so much the parts themselves, to keep to the original authenticity of the song, and I hope that the guys from Rush get to hear it. Thanks for asking me.
No problem. My personal favorite, I'm being greedy because I have other songs I need to hit, but my personal favorite is Not Dead Yet. That is my favorite song. It's got the best groove and feel. I was wondering, was that song easy to make? And was there a specific girl for the inspiration?
That's a combination of a few women, but that's a co-write with Mikky, Ekko.
Okay.
Who wrote Stay with Rihanna and multiple hits. He's a great LA writer. Yeah, just a super groovy, up-tempo song. It's going to be the second single, actually, so I'm really glad you mentioned it.
Well, let's go back to the first single because, again, another solid, good song. Lift the Curse. Right now, is that your favorite composition off the album?
I don't really have a favorite. I mean, this album, we wrote 30 songs for this record, so we narrowed it down to, I think, 10 solid songs, and the composition of the overall album, makes this song that I listen to the most kind of changes from day to day, and it's still new and fresh, so I'm still listening to the album. And because we're getting ready to go on tour, constantly referring to the recordings because I think those songs are at their best the way we recorded them. I really like Nobody Wins, which is the last song on the record, which I think people with ADD may not make it that far, but I just can only hope that, and I suffer from that sometimes too as well, but I just only hope that people can give this album the time of day, and I think different songs are going to resonate with people different times in their lives too, so I think the record's got depth. Like I said, I don't think there's a particular favorite.
You layered the album pretty well. I think the ones that stick out the most to me is Ain't Going Easy, Nobody Wins, Don't Drink the Water, and Something to Die For. They're perfectly in place on the album. You said the Redlight King camp is about the human condition when writing. It's about people going through the struggle, not always getting through it, but this is what's happening. For me personally, the way I interpreted this album was there was social commentary on current times within the US and Canada, and not so much specifically like, hey, we are dead set quoting this is what happened, but I felt like there were inspirations for it. Was there anything specific for those songs or any song on the album that was like, okay, this you can really trace back to, well, I saw what was happening in Flint, Michigan, so I had this idea for the title name, or, you know, these lyrics popped in when I saw this?
I think, honestly, there's just so much going on that it's hard to be specific. I think there's an overall tone of events that's happening in the world that's pretty upsetting. And we're seeing just a lot of unfairness, a lot of misguided leadership. I think that there's a lot of sort of hidden truth that we're being distracted. I think a lot of the shootings, I think, you know, our friends in Eagles of Death Metal, like my sound guy was doing at the board when there was shooting in France and they killed 80 people or something like that. It was he could have died, you know, and they actually lost 2 guys in their crew. The school shootings, the amount of racism and racial injustice in the country is upsetting. The inequality, the poverty. I'm in LA and they're overrun with homeless people, you know. So the condition right now, we're fed the American dream an awful lot, and I've been here 10 years now, and I consider myself to be American, although I am a Canadian citizen. I was born in Canada, but, you know, I'm proud of this country, and this country has given me my livelihood now. So I think in the end of the day, the social commentary for me is I stand for equality in all sense of the word, and it's not a socialist thing, or I'm not a politician. I'm seeing what I'm seeing, and the story really hasn't changed for decades.
I can understand that. With the music you've done and all the songs that have touched people, like Bullet in My Hand or etc., what was a moment where you felt like, wow, it just never left you? Like you had a fan walk up to you, tell you their story, which I'm sure many have, maybe hundreds of fans that have told you something personal and it meant a lot to them. But what was one fan that went, hey man, this is what you did for me, and then even you, like, oh, I hear it all the time, but you were taken back like, wow, you know what, I did it, I made a difference?
I never really replied with that, damn, I did it, I made a difference thing. I never actually thought of that. It is a wow sort of moment when I get DMs on Instagram with these events that happen in people's lives where they reference my music or my lyrics, especially the lyrics. I think that people really attach to them, and I take pride in that because I work very hard at being a craftsman. So a lot of people play Old Man at their dad's funeral because it hits them so hard. So that's a big one for me. But this woman came up to me with her husband, who's in the Air Force, and he was served like 2 or 3 terms in Iraq and Afghanistan. And they talked about Bullet in My Hand and how their infantry and their squad would play it, and it kept him going. It fired him up. It kept him going. I think that meant an awful lot because those people sacrifice so much for us and for our freedom, and they don't always come home. So to me, it was, and they just hugged me, and they both almost started crying, and I almost started crying. Like it was moments. That's one particular moment that I remember, and there's been a lot. Yeah, it's a thrill. It's an honor to be a part of people's soundtrack.
And you know what? I think you are a great example of somebody that gets it. Not just immigration, but just being here in the States, being here in this particular spot, thankfulness, the understanding of what people have gone through to give us the opportunities, the things that you have. Even though, like you said, pain in the ass to get what you need.
Nothing comes easy, you know what I mean? We've all got to work for it. You know? No one's coming up to us and giving it to us for free. So, yeah. But that's everybody, right? Life's hard. You
also got to remember you've earned it, too. Yeah, man, that story almost choked me up. I got family in the military.
Yeah, heavy, man. When you start talking about that, people's family, and then they're, you know, showing you a picture of their kids, man, it's like, it gets heavy, but it's all good. It's all out of love. That's one of the best parts of my job, man, if not the best.
Now I'm gonna hit something a little bit more personal. You yourself have battled drugs and addiction, and you really lived that rock and roll style before you made Redlight King. You had hit rock bottom, had a moment where you're in a jail cell and other situations where you said, okay, what do I really want from life? And you were one of the fortunate ones to fight your way out. And now that you're back on top, still moving, still going, I was just wondering, We hear all the stories of you gotta want it and do you really want to save yourself for people that are struggling with addiction. What would be some advice, not just admit it, but what would be something like, hey, go do this or try that? Remember this. What are some things you would advise someone to do if they are struggling with addiction? Because it can come in all forms.
Oh, definitely comes in all forms. And you know what? I still struggle with it. And I really believe that recovery is something that you have to fight for. You have to fight for it harder than you fought for your addiction. So whatever that meant for you, you know, if it means you're trying to scrape together as much money as you can, or you're living on the street, or, you know, you're trying hard to catch that fix, you've got to scrape together and go harder than you ever did in order to recover, because once the brain creates those habits and those neural pathways, it's really difficult to come back to find yourself. But you still have it, you know, that's what you got to realize. It's still there. I think everybody's recovery is different. The only advice that I would have is to believe in yourself and to try to surround yourself with people who can believe in your recovery and help you with it. And that means sometimes admitting defeat and surrendering to it, accepting that you have a problem and being able to self-diagnose in order to move forward.
You know, I think that's a very wise assessment, especially I just saw an interview with Flavor Flav, and he said he was addicted, I believe, for 18 years, and he said it's going to take him the same amount of time to come back, be 100% to where he started, and he's still struggling. So I appreciate you sharing that with us. You've amassed so many contacts within your career. You know the guys in Shinedown, toured all over the world. You know people at ESPN. You know people at Disney. Who is one of those really important contacts? You don't have to say the full name or say anything that would give them away so they would be harassed, but who's a contact that as soon as you met them, they were just such a positive reinforcement for your career and moving forward? You go to them for guidance. You keep on needing to see them just because they're that great of a person.
I can't really narrow it down to one person, honestly. It's a question I don't think I don't know if I've ever been asked that before. When you create those relationships, is to try to nurture them. And sometimes that's difficult because people in this business often, you know, traveling, they have their own families. If big business is involved, meaning record labels and publishers, you know, you're not going to always be able to tour with them or keep in touch with them or write songs with them. I try to keep it close to my team, and I try to do the best I can with what I got. And everyone I meet, I try to stay in good contact with, and also I treat everyone the same. And I expect the same from them. And you don't always get that. But you know what? I'm not afraid to throw it out there first and be friendly and open and honest in myself. And if it doesn't come back, that's okay. It is what it is.
You mentioned once the bands you would like to tour with. You did say Johnny Cash and Elvis, which is kind of hard now.
I said that. That's awesome.
But you said the Foo Fighters, the Red Hot Chili Peppers, Incubus. Have you been able to at least get in contact or meet a member of those bands?
The only guy I met was Flea, and he was playing basketball at the YMCA.
You're kidding.
I've met Brandon.
Well, tell me about your Flea story, man, because that, you know how much...
There's nothing to tell, man. I was doing my record, and every day I had a membership at the Y. I was in Hollywood. We were doing the second Redlight King record. And it's a crazy Y, because, like, on one half, I go there, and Michael Rapaport's teaching kids how to play basketball. And I love him. And then... and I actually met him in New York. I actually gave him a demo in 2000, which is so weird and random. And then I see him again. He's teaching. And then I go in the other gym, and there's Flea's in a pickup basketball game. And, I just went over and said hi. That's it.
All nonchalant, man.
I mean, these guys are just normal guys. I don't know. I always find that really refreshing when I see someone I admire is so good at their craft, just being a normal person, and that's always cool.
I always try and remember they're just like everyone else, but when you grow up seeing them and idolizing, and you kind of get starstruck. I had that happen with Frank Bello of Anthrax. You know, I was ready for that interview. I've memorized the lines. I had everything. He walks in, I'm shaking. I can't speak English all of a sudden. Like, he's like, it's not my first time, kid. Go ahead. And I was like, you got it, sir.
That's funny. Yeah, I actually got to play with Anthrax once. I think it was at up in Columbus, Ohio. So that's Rock on the Range. We were playing, and that was a great day because we played right before Anthrax. And while we were playing, Phil Anselmo watched our whole set side stage.
Oh, man.
And he comes up to me after and he goes, "That was pretty good, brother. You guys were all right." He goes, "Not trying to be like one of these other fucking bands, Pantera wannabe bands." It was awesome. That was a good one.
Speaking of festivals, because I know you like them because it gives you an opportunity to, expose the band to other people and kind of gives you a little edge, like, okay, you guys are going to see us now. Let me show you what we can do. But I was wondering, can you remember the WMMRBQ from 2014? Because you mentioned it before. It was cool to see Rob Zombie and all the guys. But do you remember anything specific?
Yeah. I remember what was really good was Volbeat was playing, right? Guys from Denmark. And before us, Jim Breuer, the comedian, played. And he does this incredible set, right? Anyways, we're backstage, and Brewer's just hammering the singer from Volbeat. And we were just all losing because he was like doing this goofy Danish like accent. And the guy didn't get it. It went over his head because he's not English. So
right.
He was getting pissed. And we're all and Jim was so funny and so friendly. That's what I remember from that specific.
Just thinking, because all the performances were there, the Dropkick Murphys were there. I was there in time to see you guys. That day really changed my life in a lot of ways. So,
dude, I'm so glad, man. That's so great. You got to keep going to live music shows. I'm glad you're working with bands and interviewing bands, and I'm grateful for this one. And I thank you for your time.
I had one more question for you before you go. What's the best piece of advice someone's given you that really comes to mind? It can be something ridiculous like don't buy a bus, rent one, or it could be something that may not mean anything to anyone else but was so deeply profound on you.
This is it, man. It was my own guy, Jimmy Messer. I was talking about my career and how it's just been through so many things, right? Ups and downs, like you wouldn't believe. Not like little rocky waves. Like I'm talking giant waves, and it's slam. You got nothing. Whether or not I've got a record deal, all of a sudden we got money next year, no one will look at you. And I mean, this happens every 3 years. You just go through this massive wave. And I'd been down and out for a bit, and I said, man, I just need to keep steady here until I turn the corner. And Jim turns to me and he goes, you know what you got to realize? I go, what's that? He goes, there is no corner. And I don't know if that's a piece of advice, but for me it was, because what he's trying to say is you've got to enjoy the process. You've got to love what you do, and you've got to know this is what you do. Whether you expect those highs or lows or not, they're there. They're going to be there in life. It's going to knock us down. We got to get back up. If that means not having money, it doesn't mean you're going to turn the corner. It means you just got to do you, and you got to stay positive. I translated it as a piece of advice.
Man, that is like some Matrix stuff, like there is no spoon, there is no corner. That is perfect.
Dude, I know, it sounds so simple, but it was mind-blowing at the time because I was really feeling it. He goes, there is no corner. And I'm like, you're right.
My God, man. Kaz, you've gone from pretty much every job you can think of. You've been a bouncer, a meter reader, you picked up carpet, you've done everything you could, and you scratched and you clawed, and you've made it. And you've made Redlight King something that is a force to be reckoned with. Sir, thank you sincerely so much for your time and wisdom.
Thank you so much for doing your research and your homework. This was a great interview, and I really appreciate you doing that, man.
Before you go, can we get an ID from you, sir?
Absolutely. What's up, everybody? This is Kaz from the band Redlight King. You're listening to John the Ninja.